Hi, everyone. I'm Joan Raymond, and this is A Heart for Writing. Have you ever wondered how to break into a new genre with a new pen name? Well, on today's broadcast, I have the honor of chatting with Leslie Budewitz, and I am going to bring up a picture of Leslie while I introduce her. So, anyway, Leslie is a three-time Agatha Award winner and best-selling author of the Spice Shop Mysteries and Food Lovers Village Mysteries. And I'm also chatting today with moody suspense author Alicia Beckman, who basically are one and the same. So um, let's welcome both Alicia and Leslie. Hi, Leslie.
Thank you for having me, or should I say us?
Yeah, you can speak for both of you today. Um, so Leslie, I want to talk to you first. Ask you about your first genres. So your first genres are the spice shop mysteries, and I'm going to put this picture up because this is just your recently released book. This came out in July, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you want to say anything about it? I love the cover, by the way. Just love the cover.
Isn't it just adorable? I love that dog. I fall in love with him every time one of these covers comes to me for the first time. The Spice Shop series is actually my second cozy mystery series. I
Mhm.
started with the Food Lovers Village mysteries. And when two of the Food Lovers Village mysteries were out, that's when the Spice Shop debuted. There are 5 full-length novels and a short story collection in the Food Lovers Village series. You can see the cover of the short story collection, Carried to the
Well,
Grave, behind
here's
me.
one of them.
And
Here's
that's
one of them
Crime
right
Rib,
there.
which is second in the
Mhm.
series, Murder at a Summer Arts Festival, and A Steak Grill Off. And I just absolutely love the title. The brilliant people at Penguin came up with that. It is either stupidly perfect or perfectly stupid, either one. And I love it. So for a while, I was writing two series, two cozy mystery series.
Mhm.
The Spice Shop series is the one I'm continuing. Peppermint Barked, which you just had up, is
Mhm.
number 6. I have turned in number 7
Ooh.
and hope that there will be more in the series as well. It is set in Seattle, where my main character, Pepper Reese, runs a spice shop
Mhm.
in Pike Place Market.
Yes.
And any readers who have, or authors watching us who have been to the market, may know that there are, in fact, 2 spice shops in the market. This is neither of them. I created my own so that I
Mhm.
could kill people.
Yeah. We tend to do that in our books. We don't want anybody getting mad at us. So, and this was a seasonal one, right?
It
It's
is. It's a
yeah.
Christmas mystery. I wrote a Christmas mystery in my Food Lovers Village series. The 5th book is called As the Christmas Cookie Crumbles. And
Oh.
writing a Christmas book is so much fun that
Mhm.
I wanted to do it again. And I know that readers really enjoy Christmas books.
Right.
Plus, it worked in the chronology of the series. The 4th book was in August, the 5th book was set in October. So it made a lot of sense to set the next one in December. And the market is such a vibrant, colorful place. And Christmas is, of course, a really big deal down there. And
Right.
so it was really a lot of fun for me to slip a little murder and mayhem in among the mistletoe.
Of course. And so your two the two mysteries, Seattle and Montana.
Mhm.
And you live in Montana. So Seattle, talk about why you have them set in those two
Sure. I am a Montana girl, born and raised here. Like a lot of people from my age group, I left for a few years, went to Seattle University for college,
Mhm.
then to Notre Dame in Indiana for law school, and back to Seattle to practice for several years. So I know and love Seattle. I have not lived there in a long time, but I do visit regularly for research. And by research, of course, I mean eat. Uh, I fell in love with the Pike Place Market when I was an 18-year-old college freshman, and I made it my mission to eat my way through the place. I'll never be done because the market is always changing. Fortunately, my best friend from college still lives in Seattle. Excuse me. And she does some ground truthing for me as well. I will be out there in a few weeks to do some research. and to do a book talk at Third Place Books in Lake Forest Park. And so I'll get a chance to walk around a little bit and Ground Truth, the manuscript I just turned in.
Mhm.
I'm not naming it because I gave the editor 2 titles to choose from, and we haven't decided yet.
Okay.
And also to choose some locations and some food for the future books.
Mhm.
So I come by Seattle, my knowledge of Seattle through my own experience. I moved back to Montana, to the northwest corner of the state near Glacier National Park, just about 30 years ago. And that's where my Food Lovers Village is located. It's a fictional town based on a real town on the northeast corner of the lake. Happens to be the town we live near. The real town is called Big Fork. The fictional one is Jewel Bay. I always say to people who live around here, I call it Jewel Bay, but you won't be fooled.
So after having a lot of success with those genres, all of a sudden then you decided to make the transition to moody suspense. And not only that, you went with a new pen name. And I'm going to show this book. This was the first one that Alicia wrote. And this came out in 2021. And then on Tuesday, October 11th, which this is the day that this is actually going to be released, your brand new one is coming out. So tell us about your transition to, I mean, you're still writing the cozies, but you're now writing these too. So now you're still writing. And are these series? Explain to our viewers.
So far, Alicia's books are standalones. And I'm so glad you did close-ups of the covers, because I think Crooked Lane, the publisher, has just done absolutely fabulous covers. Yes. I am in love with both of them. And you can tell that they are a little darker, moodier books than Leslie's books.
Yeah,
Alicia's
especially
books are
that one.
moodier.
That one, you know that one's going to be up to no good. You know something dark is happening. And this one, I didn't even notice the cross in it until I got it bigger. And I'm like, wow, that one, yeah, definitely.
Of course, it's an intersection, but it's also a cross. And that symbolism is very important in the book. As I said, so far they're standalones. I don't know if that will continue. Either character could, main character could continue in a series, but I'm kind of enjoying the standalone option. You asked about the pen name. That actually was the publisher's idea, because the publisher wanted to make sure that readers knew to expect something a little bit different. The standalones are not bloody or gory by any means, but they don't include some of the lighter touches that the cozies do. They are a little grittier book. The name honors my mother and grandmother. My mother's name was Alice. She died just over 4 years ago. And my father often called her Alicia. The Beckmans were my great-grandparents, and I kept a picture of them on my desk as I wrote. They were my physical image for Sarah's great-grandparents in Bitterroot Lake, and the great-grandparents and the mystery that Sarah discovers surrounding them is very important. Their personal stories are absolutely nothing alike, but I wanted that physical image, and so I kept that close by when I was writing Bitterroot Lake. Oddly, Bitterroot Lake was the first one published, but Blind Faith was the first one written for the most part.
Wow.
I started that in 2016 and finished it worked on it between other projects. It was not under contract. It is so far the only book I have written that was completely written, that was complete before I sold it. It was a bit of a leap for me and remains that way, in that it is dual timeline and a multiple point of view book. The cozies are all single point of view. Bitterroot Lake is a single point of view, although there are letters and journal entries from the past that come in as well. Blind Faith is told through 4 point of view characters. There is a contemporary cold case investigation and then a historic storyline that intersects and works its way forward. And we meet two of our main characters, Lindsay and Carrie, when they are teenagers in the historic storyline.
Wow.
But we meet them as adult women in their early 50s in the contemporary investigation. There is also a priest in the historic storyline, and it's not a spoiler to say he is murdered. And the cold case, which is being investigated by a young homicide detective in Billings, Montana, where the book is set, largely, his murder is being investigated. So we have scenes in the perspective of Brian Donovan, the detective, as well.
Interesting. My first book that I wrote, I had 8 point of view characters, and everybody told me, don't do it. It's stupid. And I didn't have them all on there at once. It was usually about 4 of them. And then it would switch to, and I don't know. The story had to be told that way. All I know is that. So
the story tells us, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Some
it does.
stories can only be told in this way. And this is a very complicated, I shouldn't say complicated, I should say complex story. It's involved because you have to keep a fair number of characters straight and watch the timeline. I will say that I helped the reader out a little bit by putting dates and locations at the beginning of each scene. And hopefully you will quickly realize whose point of view you're in and be able to track things that way. It was a bit of a challenge. You can see over my shoulder bifold closet doors. Even though I am an outliner and a planner, I needed to be able to see what I was doing. And at one point I had those doors covered in sticky notes in 3 different colors.
Wow.
One for the present day investigation, one for the historical, and then a third for some newspaper stories that show up as well. It was a lot to keep in my head at one time. So I needed both that easy to grasp visual and the chart I'd created, the written chart, and I also had a scene by scene outline. When you're dealing with a an involved story like that, every tool you can use becomes important.
And that was exactly going to be my next question is, are you an outliner or a pantser? Because I'm a pantser. So when I did mine, I pantsed it all the way through. And it sounds like yours, though, with the dual timelines and everything else, it would be really hard without.
I think it would have been. I do a lot of that discovery that pantsers do in their first draft through my notes and my planning for the outline. It is a right brain process of discovery, not a left brain process of decision making. It just is that my first attempt, my first stab at the story takes the form of an outline rather than complete sentences.
Got it. That works. So with so you didn't try to hide your name. You let everybody know. I remember on Facebook, it was your name, and then all of a sudden it was both names. So, at first I'm like, what? And then, so you never tried to hide the fact that you had both names. Do you think that really helped readers know? I mean, even though, first of all, we were able to separate the 2 genres, but do you think it also helped with marketing and sales to show that there was 2 different names?
Well, I think it does ultimately because readers know what to expect. And we want readers to have an idea, if they want one, and most do, what they're getting into. When they pick up Peppermint Barked, they know what kind of story they're getting. And when they pick up Blind Faith, they know right away that they're in for a little bit different ride. And I thought that was important to do. But I also know that with so many books out, Blind Faith will be my 15th book, the 13th novel. There's a short story collection and a nonfiction book in there. I do have readers, and I wanted them to know, here's what I'm doing, and I hope you'll follow me, and many of them have. It also helps me find new readers who might not pick up a cozy, because it is certainly true that some readers don't care for that lighter side, don't care for the amateur sleuth and the humor and some of the other elements. And I didn't want to turn them off with the same name where they wouldn't know what to expect. So hopefully it's working. I think
Yeah.
it is.
So, and do you have to keep two different social media accounts, or do you just keep the one account and you talk about both books? I mean, how does that work?
I do have one joint website, and all the social media is the same account. And I was able to do that because Crooked Lane did not ask me to hide my identity. They knew that I still had followers. They knew that I had a presence in Montana, and that people elsewhere know me as a writer who writes about this state. And this state is an interesting place to a lot of people. And so they were perfectly willing to let me continue to use those channels and those hooks to bring in readers. But we just wanted to make sure that we were not confusing the expectations. So everything has been open. I will say that I had a fun, for me, experience when a blogger reviewed Bitterroot Lake. She read the book. She did not know that it was me. She saw the dedication at the front and knew that the woman it was dedicated to was someone in the mystery community, Ramona Long, who has unfortunately since passed away. But the blogger and book reviewer knew, I must know this author. I must know Alicia, but she didn't have any idea who Alicia was until she got to the very end and saw in the biography, she was reading an electronic advance copy, that it was actually me. And the funny thing is, she and I had met in person. She had reviewed earlier books of mine. We'd done interviews. She should have known, and she didn't. And I loved that. It meant that I'd done the job right.
Yeah, seriously, that you could actually separate the two genres so well and write so differently. So with two books in two different genres coming out within months of each other, how did you handle plot lines, characters, writing schedules? Give us a kind of a day in your life, or a week in your life, or a month.
So as I said, Blind Faith was actually written a little while ago. I wrote it between 2016 and 2019, heavily revised it in 2019, and then, 2020, after Bitterroot Lake had come out. And that's when it was sold. And so, of course, that's when I went through all the editing and all of that. So it is still fairly fresh in my mind. It's just that the origins of it date back a few years. I work on one project at a time, although as you know, and many other writers know too, that's never quite as straightforward or pure as you want it to be. So for example, I've just turned in Spice Shop number 7. I will get the edits from my editor at 7th Street back sometime this fall. Well, by then I will be deep into what I hope will be Alicia's 3rd standalone. And I will have to go back to the Spice world and dive into the edits. And then we'll have to do that again for copy edits and proofreading. So you're always going back and forth a little bit. I don't really have any trouble with that for the most part, because the stories are different. The places, there's a little bit of overlap, but not much. The overlap is that in the standalone that I'm working on right now, there is one character who lives in Seattle, and the other 2 point of view characters live in Montana, and the Seattle woman will eventually come here. So there is some overlap that way. But because they're distinct stories, it's like they live in different corners of my brain, and I don't have to worry about it too much.
Do you think this Seattle person will ever drop into this Pepper Spice Shop by any chance?
She might. You never know.
I had that from my first book, and then that was a standalone. And then my second book is a cozy, and it was the very first in the series. And I actually had 2 of the characters that everybody absolutely loved, because the cozies have a crafting outlet. And I had them traveling from San Diego north, and they just happened to stop in, and it was kind of a funny scene. People that had never read the first book, would have not had any idea, but other people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you brought them in. That's so awesome." So,
I
but
think that's wonderful. It's great fun. It, as you say, is something that readers who don't know both books
Mhm.
won't pick up on, but it's
No.
a little gift to those who do.
And for me as an author, I miss those 2 characters because
Yes,
they were kinda like the comic relief, and so I was able to stick them in, and it was kind of fun for me to like visiting old friends,
we do get attached to them, don't we?
Yes, we do, definitely. So, will you continue, do you then oh boy, I can't talk. Do you write 2 books a year then? I mean,
I have been writing 2 books a year, and
how is that on you personally? Is that do you find that easy? Like, if you just drop everything else and put on the writing hat and tell everybody to leave you alone, is that doable for you?
so far it's been a pretty manageable schedule.
Okay.
I don't know whether the standalones will be every year. Probably not. Right
Mhm.
now, I'm still working on what I hope will be the third one. So it probably wouldn't be out until 2024. So assuming it sells, I don't
Mhm.
actually have a contract for it at the moment. Um, but that's okay too if it's not exactly 2 a year. 2 a year is not hard for me to write, but 2 a year is a challenge to promote. And as you pointed out, these books are coming out only 3 months apart.
Yeah.
When they're 6 months apart, it's a little easier, but it gets a little confusing at times, and we're asking some of our we're asking a lot of our readers and some of our promotional partners as well. The local newspaper, for example, did a profile on me in July. Well, now they're doing another one. And because the books are different and because my talk at my launch party next week will be different,
Mhm.
uh, it's still newsworthy. But that's the advantage of living in a town with 3,000 people. The uh, daily newspaper in Kalispell, which is 25 miles away, has also run 2 pieces on me. They're very
Mhm.
generous because they like local news. But when we ask bloggers to have us twice, sometimes that's a lot. And so I've had to make choices which outlets to go to. To some extent, the difference in subgenre helps
Mhm.
because I'm not asking cozy bloggers and reviewers
Right.
to give me their time twice a year. I'm only asking most of them to do it once a year. But some blogs and some reviewers will cover the full spectrum. And so you have to make choices
Yeah.
about who you're going to ask for help.
Yeah, you don't wanna wear out your welcome and
You
then have
don't.
them
You
say
don't.
no. Yeah. So what are the positives of writing in 2 completely different genres?
Well, the easiest way to answer that is there's just a lot of stories roaming around in the world, and quite a few roaming around in my head. And working in, as my husband says, you don't want to look in there without a flashlight. Um, there are some writers who gravitate towards a series and they want to stick with a series. And I have great respect for that because a series is a tremendous challenge to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting, to go in different places in each book so that you're not writing the same book 20 times. That is a real art and craft. Um, but my stories don't all fit within the series that I've created. This story, for example, of Blind Faith, just wouldn't have worked in one of the series. And so in order to explore that, I needed to go to a different subgenre. And so
Mhm.
that's the advantage of working in 2. You might ask me what's the drawback, and the
Yep.
drawback is that they have different styles, and so you have to write in slightly different styles. It's not usually that hard. When I get started, I know where the story is going, and so I'm not tempted, for example, to give characters in the standalones uh, goofy names like I might in the Spy Shop series. For
Mhm.
example, Pepper runs a spice shop,
Right.
and her good friend in the market is Vinny Delgado, and of course Vinny runs a wine shop.
Mhm.
I don't do that in the suspense. I'm a little more serious.
Now, so are you an avid, cozy and suspense reader? Have you
Mhm,
always read
mhm.
both of those?
Yeah.
Okay. And, because I know we're supposed to write what we read in, but so I was just curious if you've always been what came first? Were you a cozy or you a suspense reader first?
I would say first I was reading a more traditional mystery. When I started writing, which was a long time ago, a number of years before I got published,
Uh-huh.
more than 25 years ago, I had been doing a lot of driving. And in Montana, we do a lot of driving, but I was
Mhm.
doing that for work. And I was listening to a lot of books on tape. And this was in the late 90s, and they really were on tape at that point. And
Mhm.
so I was getting them from the Missoula Public Library. And they were Sue Grafton and Sarah Paretsky and Ellis Peters with her brother Cadfile books, which influenced the Spy Shop series a little bit. Elizabeth Peters, and most importantly, Tony Hillerman. And Hillerman was important because his books are set in the Four Corners area on the Hopi and Navajo reservations. And at the time, I was living on the Flathead Indian Reservation in Western Montana. I am not a tribal member, but that's where I lived and was practicing law. And I realized from reading Hillerman that I could actually set books there. And my first three, which are not published, although a couple of short stories featuring the main character were published, were set on the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Reservation, involving a young woman lawyer, single woman lawyer. So my life was my research at the time.
Write what you
And
know, right?
exactly. And that is a great way in. It's not necessarily where you want to stay, but it's a great way to get started. And so I was writing in that more traditional vein. When I took a break and then came back to writing, I chose the cozy because it's fun
Mhm.
and it's popular. And those two things have remained true. The cozy it is a lot of fun. I have a lot of respect for the cozy subgenre. I think that it is actually a tremendous way to demonstrate the skills of an amateur sleuth. The amateur sleuth in a cozy is usually a woman who runs a shop or a business of her own. Sometimes she's a librarian, but she is generally in charge of something, and she's in charge of her own life. And she is sometimes dismissed as being light and fluffy. But the truth is, these are women who see a problem affecting their community and they are going to solve it.
Yep.
And they pull together all kinds of information that, for a variety of reasons, isn't necessarily available to the professional sleuths, the investigators from local law enforcement. These women have an ability to make connections between things, to talk to people, and really to solve a problem. I actually could make a case that the cozy can be kind of a feminist statement in that these are women who are running their own lives and running businesses and providing jobs and solving crimes, problems that affect the people and places that matter most to them. So as you can see, I can get up on a spice box
Yeah,
to talk
spice
about
box.
the cozy mystery for
Yeah.
a long time. I really love the genre, and I'm seeing writers do really good, truthfully serious work among the slightly humorous and lighter aspects of the
Well, with
genre.
all the quirky characters and,
Mhm.
all the little silly, lighthearted things, there's a lot of seriousness in there. There's a
There
lot of
is. The best cozies are about something, and
mhm.
many of them tackle social issues as well, and that's really important. We're also seeing an increasing diversity of both authors and main characters in the cozy, and I think that's fabulous.
Yes, I agree with you. Um, So, our viewers that are considering writing in two different genres, you have two pen names. Would you suggest they look into getting two pen names?
So a pen name can be really useful, but it can also be slightly a drawback. And so I would suggest that the author writing in two genres consider what those genres are. If you're writing sweet romance and erotica, you probably need two different names.
Yes.
If you're writing for children and you're writing for adults, again, you might want two different names. But if you're writing within mystery and your subgenres aren't that different, then I think you're okay. For example, my friend Katrina McPherson writes historical mystery set in Scotland between the wars. She writes contemporary uh, humor, comic mysteries featuring a Scot living in California. She is a Scot living in California. And then she also writes standalone suspense set in Scotland, and they're all under the same name. So you can certainly do that. She's not the only one. In fact, I hope to have a piece in Crime Reads later this month featuring focusing on a number of authors who write in multiple genres, and I think they all write under the same name. So you have to look at why you're writing in the two genres and what those genres are, and whether it's ultimately going to make promotion and finding your audience harder or easier. Of course, the publisher might have something to say about that too.
True. And then one last question. What advice would you give to writers who are either starting out or trying to sustain writing in two genres?
So I think the most important thing is to understand the genres and to know what kind of story you want to tell. Um, Read, really, you and I talked about that a little bit earlier, the importance of reading in your genre. Sometimes beginning writers are a little bit hesitant to read widely in their genre, or read deeply, I should say, because they don't want to be influenced. Go ahead, be influenced. Be influenced by Katrina McPherson, by Laurie King, by Ruth Ware, by Laura Lippman, by the authors who are writing the things you love. When you sit down to actually write your story and you're working on your own story with your own styles and your own themes and your own messages, those other influences will not show up on the page if you're doing fiction right. But instead, you will have learned from other writers. You'll have learned from Kent Kruger, from Mick Herron, from Rachel Housel Hall, from others who are writing the sort of stories that you want to write. These are
Right.
people who have paid their dues and are telling some of the most amazing stories out there, and you want to learn from them. So read them. Outline a book that you admire, one that you want to write. A fairly recent and successful book that is something similar to what you want to write. I will freely admit I outlined Laura Lippman's After I'm Gone, because that book uses the structure that I use in Blind Faith, where we've got the contemporary cold case and then the historic timeline. And then we've also got multiple point of view characters. I wanted to understand how she had done that. And I learned so much from reading it. If I showed you my copy, you would see that I look like a stalker, right? I got different colored highlighters in there and notes because I was trying to understand the structure. And I think that outlining a book like that is really a useful tool. You will begin to understand on a subconscious level so much more than you otherwise would have.
Yeah, and these are the mentors that we can use, even though that we don't talk to them face to face, or have a Zoom call with them or something. But these are the mentors that help us understand plot, story, character arc, all that kind of stuff.
All those
And
things.
yeah, and without having to bug them or stalk them, in real life. Anything else you want to add, Leslie?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to visit and
Sure.
to chat with your listeners. I think that talking with other people through this medium is something that we didn't really have as intensely as we have it now, and it's been a real gift to the writing community that we can use Zoom and Crowdcast and other platforms, YouTube, and all the tools that we have now to connect with people in a way that we couldn't.
Plus, viewers
So,
get to
thank
see
you.
you, in your environment and realize that you're just a regular person like, they are. And, if Leslie can do it, maybe I can do it. It just gives them some hope too.
I
So,
hope so. I hope so.
so thank you, Leslie. Thank you for bringing Alicia. She was a little quiet, but that's okay. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. So afterwards, when you watch this, there'll be links to find Leslie, her books, her social media, how to get her new book, her blog, and then if you have questions for Leslie or myself, both of us will be monitoring all the comments on this video, and so we're more than happy to answer all your questions. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.